A lot of people, we get the emails every day. We get the messages on social media every day. Why isn't this investigation wrapped up?
It's not difficult to talk about the McNeil case. It's not difficult to talk about any case because we're telling the truth. Everything that we say is verifiable.
Please, if you have opinions on this process, come do ride-alongs. If you want to see why investigations take so long to make an arrest and then come to conclusion, come to court. They're open.
Hello everyone, welcome to the first episode of Inside JSO. It is an inside look at how operations go here at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office with police and corrections. We've got a great team here to kick things off. Obviously, your Sheriff, TK Waters, your Under Sheriff, Sean Coursey, and our Chief Public Affairs Officer, Lara Matina. So we are maybe a little bit tired, maybe a little bit relieved, but encouraged after finishing a 6-series town hall throughout the city of Jacksonville, going into people's neighborhoods, all in an effort to be transparent, to be open. So we did these in each of the 6 police service districts. We were able to come face to face with hundreds of people. Sheriff, first of all, tell me how it went for you. This was the second year doing this.
I think it went well. I enjoyed myself. I actually really like getting out with the public and answering, giving information, helping people to understand what really goes on inside JSO, and answering questions. I think the best way to show how open you are, how transparent you are, how truthful you are, is to take questions. Whatever questions people ask, we answer. And if we can't answer it there, we answer it when we get a chance to get back to the station.
Yeah, so Lara, I want to talk about those questions. People submitted questions. Obviously, if you combine everything, we had hundreds and hundreds of people in attendance across these service districts. What happened to the questions that were not addressed right there? Where do they go?
So every single one of them were answered by the appropriate person at JSO. So what I do is I gather the questions that we were not able to address during any of the town halls, and I distribute them to the appropriate unit, and either that commander or designee of that commander would call that person back, email that person back, whatever contact information they provided, just so we can make sure that every single question gets answered.
Keyword, every single
Every
question.
single one.
As long as there was a contact.
Yeah.
Correct, right. And that's why we made such a big deal during the town halls of encouraging people to leave their contact information so we could get back to people.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, Sheriff took a lot of questions. The district commanders for each region took questions. Under Sheriff, I don't know if you wanted to take the questions, but you had to field some of the more difficult questions that go with the processes. So I've got a long list right here.
Okay.
These are some of the big questions and themes that we had here. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the internet will bring up that there are several open cases, several open investigations right now, including internal investigations where there are investigations into our own police officers and corrections officers. There's still a lot of confusion about what happens with an internal investigation. Can you give us a look at how something works once you find out that there's an allegation of either misconduct or illegal activity?
Sure. So we have 2 different units that handle these types of allegations. We have our integrity unit, which handles any type of criminal complaint. If someone is complaining that an officer has broken a Florida law, then that goes to our integrity unit. They investigate that completely. If they find, let's say they find a probable cause on an officer for breaking some law, they take it to the state attorney's office. The state attorney's office looks at it, works with the integrity unit, makes the decision on whether or not an arrest is going to be made. While that is happening, the internal affairs side, which is where they investigate the policy, that is told. That does not start until the criminal aspect of it is totally completed. Once that is completed, if an arrest is made, then we move it over to the internal side. They investigate any type of policy violation that we have, and JSO has a lot of policies. We come up with new policies all the time because of issues that arise. You know, we can't we can't see everything that's going to happen in the future. But if an officer does something he shouldn't have done and we don't have a policy for it, the sheriff and I will look at him like, we probably need to make that a policy.
Sure.
So no officers in the future do that.
Yeah, and that's a good explanation. You brought up the state attorney's office. I want to bring that to you, Sheriff. There's a lot of people that say, well, JSO and the state attorney's office work together and they're partners, so it appears that the state attorney's office is just clearing JSO officers. What is the distinction between a JSO investigation and an SAO investigation?
First of all, we're independent partners.
Uh-huh.
Ms. Nelson is elected by the members of the 4th Judicial Circuit. I'm elected by Duval County voters. So we are partners, but they're very independent, separate from one another. And the reason for that is we want to maintain the integrity of investigations by all means. We start the evidence collection portion of the investigations. We collect evidence. We may even come to a conclusion of what we think, but ultimately the prosecuting decision comes from the state attorney's office. And we do not have a seat at those tables. That is an independent decision made by Ms. Nelson and her staff. They are very good at it. We don't always agree on everything, but that's the beauty of having an independent agencies that work together, but separately when it comes to cases. And I can't stress enough how much time they put into their investigative process, that we put into our investigative process, and we wait to hear results and what they think about something that we send them, and then we move from there.
Lara, you are a former prosecutor. You worked for the 4th Judicial Circuit, State Attorney's Office. You have been on both ends, one on a JSO investigation, but also a State Attorney's Office investigation, obviously as an investigator, not somebody being investigated.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Just wanted to make that for the record. We can have fun on this. We can still have fun on this. A lot of people, we get the emails every day. We get the messages on social media every day. Why isn't this investigation wrapped up? Why don't we have answers? It's been 1 week. It's been 2 weeks. It's been months. Why don't we have these? Can you explain why some things take so long?
So the kinds of decisions on the investigations that you're talking about are run down every single fact. I can tell you, as someone who's been on that side of it and been in those meetings and been on the officer involved critical incident review panel, Melissa Nelson is thorough, she is detail oriented, and no decision is made until she's run down every single lead. That takes time. And I can tell you also from my perspective as a prosecutor, and having worked with the gentlemen who are here right now as a homicide prosecutor, I think we can almost say there's a level of humor involved when we hear that this idea that prosecutors just backstop police all the time. I think anyone who's been in JSO and anyone who's been in the state attorney's office know that while JSO detectives and prosecutors are partners, there are times that they seismically disagree on decisions. And they fight, and they get feelings hurt. We can have very differing opinions. So this idea that like a prosecutor is just going to backstop anything a police officer does just is so at odds with the reality.
Lara, maybe you can explain the two thresholds
Yeah, absolutely.
that the police have to reach and that the state has to reach, and why that causes a difference between our thought processes.
That's the heart of sort of this disconnect, right? Mm-hmm. Police make arrest decisions based on a standard of probable cause. Okay. And in the spectrum of proof, that's kind of in the middle. I mean, it doesn't have a numerical authority, but it's enough to show a prima facie case of whatever law violation it is. Prosecutors, on the other hand, their standard of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the highest level of proof under the law. And in addition to that, when prosecutors make a decision to file charges, he or she has to be able to say that she has a reasonable probability of conviction. So that is both a legal obligation, but an ethical obligation. So when we are often having these disagreements about whether or not, charges should be filed or it's time for an arrest or something like that, the police are appropriately operating on a standard of probable cause, but the prosecutors are operating at proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So I can tell you, having been on that side of it, prosecutors want to lock down every single fact. They want to proactively push off, affirmatively defend any argument that a suspect or defendant could make to counter it. So often prosecutors are asking police officers, sort of, for example, in homicides, we're saying, yeah, we may have enough for arrest right now, but I need you to do all these things before we're ready to arrest, before we're ready to start running that clock. There's a speedy trial requirement under the law. I need you to be able to push off this defense. We know it's coming.
Yeah. And I just think that people don't understand the intricacies and the complications, and you have to get it right. You have to make sure that you are correct, because you can't run it back 6 months later and say, actually, on second thought, we found out this.
Right.
Correct.
And the common thing between the two is the law, right? We both are always going to follow the law, and the sheriff says this all the time. We are not going to make decisions on emotions. We are going to make decisions on what the law says, strictly, and that's what we do. That's what he does.
And I think we can all agree, nobody wants a wrongful arrest ever. And that goes, not only for, citizens, civilians, but police officers as well. We never want to get it wrong. And like the undersheriff said, we also not only don't want to get it wrong, we want to get it right. So when we arrest, we want to say, we've got our ducks in a line. In 6 months, when speedy trial has run, we are ready for a criminal trial.
And that goes back to officers as well. Sheriff, you have not shied away from announcing the arrests of police officers and corrections officers within our agency, by our agency. Tell me what goes through your head when you have to make that decision when somebody does get arrested and they're a member of the force.
So, first of all, if you intentionally violate a law at the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office as an employee, I don't feel sorry for you at all. I think you're dirtying up a very noble profession, a profession where people expect us to be honest, truthful, and treat you the way that you should be treated, whether you're being arrested or not. And if you intentionally violate a law, I have no pity. I don't mind it at all. As a matter of fact, the undersheriff and I will have discussions at times. We may end up saying this person deserves to be arrested, and we move forward with that in our minds. But again, there's an investigative process that takes place, and everyone deserves due process. Everyone deserves the investigative process. And when you mentioned earlier about sometimes it's taken a week or 2 weeks is long enough. There's not one case that's or from any section, whether it be a burglary, special assault, homicide, robbery. These cases take a long time. In order to get it to where you can get it to a prosecutor where they can make a strong case and win that case in court, they take a long time. And I believe the person that's accused of this crime needs and deserves a very thorough investigation, and it can't be quick. If you do a knee-jerk reaction, you do something quickly, you're going to make a bad mistake, and you're going to find yourself in a lot of trouble. So we don't ever want to do that. I don't have a problem at all. I've said this: we have 3,400 plus employees. We've arrested 21 since I've been sheriff. Not proud of it at all, but when you look at that number of 3,400 employees and 21 arrests, that shows that our agency is a very professional one, high standards, and I tell the public about every single one of them. And we'll continue to do that.
And that's the big thing. No surprises. There's not going to be some investigative journalist that's going to find that somebody did something that got swept under the rug. It's just right away. Sometimes these people have been arrested literally minutes before your news conference, and we see that. Now, on the other hand, if they're not arrested, but they have done something that is against policy, they come to you, undersheriff, and
they do sometimes. So it depends. On our policy violations, we have minor policy violations up to big major policy violations. And it just depends. It also depends on their background and if they have violated policies in the past and have been punished for those. An officer can get anything from what we call an informal counseling, and that is just a, Vic, don't do that again. And then the next
I've
step,
heard that before here.
the next step would be a formal counseling, which is the same thing, but then that's in writing. And then you have a written reprimand level 1 and a written reprimand level 2, a written reprimand level 2 with a suspension. So anytime there's a suspension involved or a termination, then it meets my level. It has to come to me to make that decision. Those are pretty serious policy violations, or they are repeat offenders.
Okay.
So, and that's how we get there.
What does it take to fire an officer on the spot? Because obviously a lot of people in the community would say, fire this person. There's a lot of legal reasoning why you can't necessarily fire them.
Well,
on
if
the
it's a
spot.
criminal case, like the sheriff said, the officer has to have due process like any other person in our country. So they have to work through that criminal side before I can make that decision. Well, that's not actually true. If it's a felony, we can fire them right then and there, but we don't start the administrative investigation until the criminal part is done. If it's a policy violation and you're asking when can we fire them, right then and there, it has to be something that's pretty clear cut, because again, they deserve to have an investigation done. They deserve to have the chance to clear their name. They are also civil service, so they have civil service protection because the city's consolidated.
And what does that mean?
So that means that they are allowed civil service protection. They can have a lawyer or a union rep with them when they are being interviewed by our internal affairs. Now, if it's an administrative investigation, not a criminal, they can't plead the Fifth Amendment. They can't say, I'm not going to tell you. We can order them to tell, and they have to respond or they can be terminated. That is why we have to wait until the criminal case is 100% finished before we start that administrative case. Because if the criminal case is still going and I order you, Vic, I'm giving you a direct order to answer that, that can't be used in the criminal case, and that could destroy the entire criminal case.
That's a Garrity violation.
Right.
Okay.
And you cannot mix the two investigations. That's why, Undersheriff, tell them when we have an issue come up, where do we start? Do we start at the very top? But I'll let the Undersheriff
So
explain
we
that.
always start at criminal. Anytime there's a complaint that comes in, we start on the criminal side to look to make sure that no criminal laws were violated by that officer. If we determine that there's no criminal infractions, then it then goes to the administrative side. Internal gets it. Depending on the complaint, again, the sheriff and I will talk about it. We'll decide if that officer needs to, we call it being defrocked. And it's when we remove all police powers from that individual. They're still employed, they're still getting paid, but they're sitting at a desk answering a phone. They don't have contact with citizens. Like I said, they don't have police powers, they don't drive a police car.
Right.
And they sit there until that investigation is done. Lots of times it's determined that they will get let's say they get a written reprimand level 1. Once that is done, they then get their police powers back most of the time, and they go back to work. And hopefully they learn from those mistakes.
Is it possible for an officer to never go back to work?
It is.
And to have desk duty for the rest of their career, but still be employed?
It is. And the reason is, we spoke about the civil service. So if the sheriff and I decide to terminate an individual, an officer, he can take that to a civil service board, which is a board made up of 9 civilians. Those civilians have nothing to do with JSO. We don't know them. They're not employed by JSO. We don't appoint them. We don't sit on the board. It's basically going in front of a jury. The officer can have a lawyer with them and testify, and then I have to go testify on behalf of the sheriff's office in the city. And it's not whether or not that officer did whatever he's being accused of. We determine that in the investigation. It's whether or not the termination or the suspension is what we call manifestly unjust.
Okay.
Were we too harsh on that officer? I'll give you one example, and it didn't happen under Sheriff Walters' administration. It happened under the prior administration. An officer was driving drunk on duty. He was going to the gun range. Other officers that were with him going to the gun range noticed it. They pulled him over. He was terminated immediately. If you're driving a police car, especially on duty or off duty, and you're under the influence, it's automatic termination.
Right. He was DUI.
He was on
In a
duty
police
in a
car.
police car.
Yeah.
Automatic termination. So he took that to the Civil Service Board. This was during the holidays. I personally think the Civil Service Board felt bad because it was during the holidays. He had lost his job. I think he had a family. They decided in his favor and gave him his job back. Now that is binding on the sheriff. We have to employ that individual. So we had to give him his job back. We don't have to put him back on the street, and we didn't and never would. We have to pay him. We have to employ him. The sheriff decides where an individual works. So that particular person sits on a desk, has no police powers, will never have police powers under the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and will stay there until he decides to resign or retire.
You know, Vic, I think the undersheriff's description about civil service protection was excellent, but I also think that this is something that is largely so foreign to most civilians that it's very difficult to kind of like wrap their head around it, because most of us, and you know, we're the civilians amongst the uniforms here, we have operated our entire careers with at-will employment, right? You know, throughout my career, I could have been fired, frankly, with or without cause. That's just how, you know, the civilian world kind of operates.
On the spot.
Right, exactly. And, you know, I would be expected to pack up my things and go when they wanted me to. Civil service protection kind of turns that entire concept on its head. So the sheriff, in a moment, and the undersheriff could say, you are fired, and yes, they don't have police powers anymore, but if that person wanted to contest, you know, the justice of the firing, there is a process that has to be gone through. It's not the decision of the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. That is a function of the consolidated government that exists here in Jacksonville. And frankly, you know, I've worked with JSO for 20 years at least, you know, and I have joined JSO in the last couple of years. I'm still kind of wrapping my head around this concept. It's so foreign from a civilian experience.
I think it was put into place, and it was years ago. I believe it was put into place to keep a rogue sheriff from saying, you know what, Sean Coursey, I don't like you. You're fired. You're out. Which, quite honestly, the majority of the sheriff's offices in the state of Florida can do that. They have that ability. If we're not the only one, we're one of the very few where our officers have civil service protection. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I think it's good for the officers. It protects them. It makes our job a little more difficult when we're trying to get rid of an employee that should not be working for JSO.
So let me say this while we're talking about this, because we're pretty heavily focused on, you know, officers that may not be doing the right thing. I can tell you that a very, 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 very large percentage of our police officers do the right thing every day. Hundreds of thousands of calls for service every year without issues. And we just want to make sure people understand exactly what goes on. I think I've been open. I think I've been very honest. I think the undersheriff has been very honest in how we do business. Unfortunately, there's going to be some. I'm not crazy. There's going to be some that we're never going to convince. Right. We'll talk. I'll stay here all day and talk about it. There's some that we're never going to convince that we are really seriously want to make sure that the public has complete trust and we do the right thing every time. But I do want to stress that because we're largely focused on the negative. There's a lot of professional young men and women here that do the job and they do it very, very well.
And
Absolutely.
Sheriff, sorry.
And I do want to use that as a turning point here, because in the town halls we heard so many compliments about people that feel safer in their neighborhoods, people that either joined Sheriff's Watch or some sort of neighborhood group, and they were able to connect with their district commanders, with the officers that live around there, maybe directly with the sheriff or you know, some staff members here. what are some of the positives that we are seeing right now? Obviously, last year we had that historic drop in violent crime, specifically murders.
Yep.
I know that you have put a lot of resources, and we can go into this, into traffic as well. One, reducing the speeding, reducing the violations, ultimately to save lives.
Yeah, so I don't think many people know that our traffic homicides outweigh our murders pretty heavily. So when you hear at our town halls, which is universal, I mean, it doesn't matter where you were, District 1, District 3, you hear that traffic is an issue. And we all feel it. We all feel the growth of the city. The roadways don't automatically get larger or more extensive. There's just a lot more people on the roadways. So we're focused really heavily on making travel safe for everyone in our city, on top of being heavily focused on violent crime, recognizing that we are up a little bit from where we were last year, but we are still not reaching the heights that we'd reached the years prior because of a heavy focus on what we're doing. And I think you're seeing, and I think the people will see in this great city of ours, that the gang violence has decreased tremendously. We're dealing with now some domestic issues that are problematic, right? And we're working on that, always trying to work on getting better when it comes to that. It's very difficult. I would never tell anybody that's easy. That's very difficult to do. But we're focused on assessments and making sure that we do everything that we can within the agency to try to save lives in that arena. We're feeling really positive about the direction when it comes to gang and street violence. Now we're working on some of those other aspects.
And how are you combating traffic? Because we obviously have a series called Bad Traffic on social media. We get a lot of comments, we get a lot of suggestions, and it seems like everybody has some sort of gripe about the drivers in Jacksonville. and you yourself included. I know that's a huge pet peeve for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a traffic man. Homicide and traffic, that's where I spent the bulk of my career. And we put motor units out there, motorcycle officers. We put traffic officers out there in cars. We put DUI officers out there. We're focused on high frequency crash locations. We're focused on locations where we know the biggest problems are. The corridors, like JTB is an issue. It always has been and always will be, because people think it's like this open Autobahn in Europe where they can drive as fast as they want, but you can't. And we face that all over the place. Also, with that, we have our partners at Florida Highway Patrol. They do a great job, and they always have. This is an issue that we're always going to face. We're always going to address. We had early on, we had problems with the motorcycle roadway takeovers. And then we had issues with the street racing takeovers. And now we have the minors that are taking over, maybe not always minors, taking over parks and recreational locations because they want to create more issues than they do anything else. Well, we focused on the motorcycles. We've taken care of that pretty successfully, I believe. Street racing is still there, but not as high and not as bad as it has been. And we're going to continue to focus on those things because it's important. These are how people get around. And everyone drives. Our young people drive. I drive. Traffic annoys a lot of people.
Our families are at risk. So I think this was slightly before I worked here at JSO. But I feel like you two had something to do with taking down the motorcycle.
The sheriff and
takeovers.
And I think Lara was in the car.
I was in the back seat.
Yeah,
Yes,
we were
I
Lara
was.
has all the fun in the back.
We were coming back from the beach, an event at the beach, and the sheriff was driving, as he always does. And we were on Beach Boulevard in a large group of, they call them Groms, the little motorcycles. We were at a stoplight, and they started driving in between the cars, pulling up to the stoplight.
Well, first they started tucking their tags underneath their seats.
They were hiding their tags because they were fixing to run the red light, and they didn't want the people to call and give their tags to the police. They didn't know we were the police. The sheriff, his vehicle is not marked. I'm not going to say we started a pursuit, but we started actively following them. The sheriff was on the radio. We had the air unit up. We ended up going all over the city. And I don't remember how many got arrested, but it was
close to 17.
Yeah, it was a bunch of them.
Yeah.
So you get on the radio, which is something that at an agency this large, is not something that people would be used to hearing.
Right.
SO1 and SO2
Right.
on the radio right there. You get on the radio. I remember this because I was working my previous job. People were fed up.
Yep.
They were fed up about this. I remember they blew by me. And then there were the allegations that they were getting into road rage incidents and this and that. Is it just, okay, enough's enough. Now's the time. Now's the place. They happen to be around me.
Oh yeah.
Let's do this.
I mean, I actually don't like it. I've heard it all over the place when I go around and talk to groups, and I saw it. When I saw it, the undersheriff saw it, and Lara saw it, and we saw what they were doing. We knew they were going to start. And I remember we were at San Pablo Beach, and we knew they were going to take off. So we started gathering the manpower that we needed to, and you know, we have a very strict policy on chases, but we had enough vehicles at intersections to be able to keep up, and our air unit, of course, keeping an eye on all of them. And we were able to gather, I think, close around 17 of them, and setting an example. And right now, we still work very diligently to make sure the roadway takeovers and that kind of stuff is not happening. Now, I'm not going to be a fool and tell people that we stopped it completely, because there are still pockets where people just show up and do things that they want to do. But the organized takeovers and stuff like that, yeah, we're always watching. We're always listening.
Here, let me add real quick. So the sheriff and I talk about this a lot. He's been here 33 years. I've been here 30 years. And we say almost every day, we miss doing law enforcement work. We miss doing police work because we don't do it anymore, right? I do administrative. He's out talking to the public all the time. So when you get the opportunity, that doesn't come along very often, where we sit to be able to actually do some police work, it was fun. We had a good time.
I was going to say, you know, I've been friends with these guys for a long time. We may have the sheriff and the undersheriff here, but at their heart, they're police officers.
Right.
And I mean, they enjoy the work. And I think, honestly, it's reflexive of responsive leadership. Like, this is an issue in a community, and just because they're in administrative positions right now, if they say a violation of the law, they're not just going to like phone it in, right?
No.
That is their sworn duty, and they execute on it. And I think, honestly, I mean, kind of looping it back, in a lot of ways, the town halls themselves, that is responsive leadership, right?
Sure.
So it's about, you know, at the heart, I think when we started it, we thought, like, this is going to be about our ability to share with the public what's going on in their agency. And what I've found now that we've been through 2 full cycles of them is it's honestly much more about listening. And, you know, the changes that the sheriff made in the traffic unit are reflexive of that. The community was saying, these are, you know, criminal issues that are making my life difficult. How do we fix that? And he executed on a plan responsively, right? And we did the same thing this year. We listened, and, you know, there certainly were some common themes. And I think we're in a process now, kind of like digesting the information that we took in, not only just the information we shared, so that the sheriff, the undersheriff, you know, staff leadership can make thoughtful decisions about deployment of assets.
Sure.
I think that's honestly the magic of the town halls, and kind of the hidden magic of transparency itself. It's a 2-way street, and it provides the sheriff's office just as much opportunity to garner information as to give it.
And I can tell you real quick, sorry, Vic.
No, you're good.
What's huge is when someone comes to you with a problem and you work the problem, you don't let it sit. Because then it sounds like you're just letting whatever complaints or issues that people have going one ear and out the other and just shining them on. Well, we don't do that. I believe that the reason we're seeing more cooperation, we're seeing more community involvement and engagement with us, is because now, not saying that it didn't happen before, but speaking from where I sit now, we are answering to the public. We are telling the public what's going on. We hear that road racing is a problem. We address road racing. We hear violence is an issue. Gang violence is an issue. We address the issues and come back to them with responses. And I think the more we do that, the better off we are as an agency, because we are truly a service-oriented agency. Yeah. We are about the public and the community, and I'm just employed by them to make sure that we do what they ask us to do.
I think the town halls, and you speak to this, Sheriff, the town halls humanizes us when we're able to speak to the people from the different districts face to face. They get to meet their commanders in person, talk to them, realize and the sheriff says this at the town halls, we're fathers and mothers and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles. We have kids and grandkids, just like everybody else. We're human beings doing a job. It's a tough job. We do the very best we can, but we do enjoy getting out and talking to the citizens in our community. And I will say this too, and I believe this because I experience it. I don't think an officer can go anywhere in this city on a daily basis without being thanked by somebody for the job they do.
It's true.
It really is great to see that,
Yeah.
to see the hardworking men and women here who are not doing it for the thank yous. And a lot of times they get other things that start with you
Yeah.
out in public, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, certain hand gestures. But then when there is somebody that I've seen people cry coming up to officers, and we get the emails and we get the messages, and please, please, please keep them coming. But when you see somebody that says, hey, this officer really went above and beyond. They really did more than I expected them to do.
Right.
And they made a difference, not just in my day, but in my future or in my kid's life and this and that. And then sometimes you see it full circle where those people come work here.
Yep.
So they become police officers.
Yeah, I can tell you this, Vic. Our friends in the media, there's often an image presented that we're the bad guy, we're the enemy of the public, you know, and I guess it sells. I guess that's part of what sells. But I can tell you from where I sit, I get phone calls, I get emails, I get all kinds of supportive correspondence from people all over the place. My friends, not necessarily my friends, people that may come across a way to contact me or they see me out in public. The overwhelming support that we have in this agency is not fairly represented sometimes in the news media, but that's what keeps us going. You know, the support that we have with our public and the public recognizing and understanding that we are working really hard to make this a great place.
Sure. This
place is already a great place. We want to make it even better. So I just wanted to say that because it's not all doom and gloom. You know, as it may seem, we did a sheriff's walk the other day, which I really enjoy those. I know people think I'm glutton for punishment because I'm out there in a long sleeve shirt and it's 100 degrees outside and 88% humidity, but I enjoy it. I enjoy walking. I enjoy talking to people. But at the end, I always like to talk to the media. And at the end, instead of the question being magnified about what happened or took place on the walk, it was about the McNeil case.
Right.
And you know, I mean, like at this point, that case has been, I've shown the public. Ms. Nelson did an amazing legal memo on it, released that to the public. There's really nothing else to say because there's litigation in place now,
Sure.
right? But that became the story instead of the sheriff's walk. And I don't ever want that just to be the story because there's a lot more to JSO than that. Remember, traffic stops. When this happened, I believe we looked up the numbers, over 38,000 traffic stops at the time that happened, and there were no issues. Right? So that often leads, I heard someone say a long time ago, if it bleeds, it leads. If it's negative, it leads. Mm-hmm. Well, that's not good. We want people to realize what an agency we are and how amazing the men and women are that work here, whether it be civilian, corrections, police, just amazing people that do a good job every single day.
So I would just say that I think that there's a big problem, one, with some journalists, two, with the keyboard warriors out there that people want to report on it or comment on something and they don't want to come.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to actually either show up to the town halls, have the conversations, go to the sheriff's walks, go to the watches, maybe go for a ride along,
mm-hmm.
and see that side of it. And I'll tell you this, she's now retired, but Officer Ramonda Barrett, you know the name, right?
Yep.
When I started in this market as a TV reporter, super green, right?
Yeah.
Like I did not know very much. I was 22 years old. I started here. She invited me. I didn't even know about this process, but she invited me. She's like, hey, come do a ride along with me. At the time, the sheriff's office was not nearly as transparent or open with the public or the media.
Right.
So there wasn't really that availability for necessarily a media ride along. And she's like, no. I just want you to come as Vic, and I am just Ramonda, you know. And we went out on the night shift in some of the more challenging areas. We got into a pursuit. We got into a foot chase. I mean, she had to, pull her gun all in one time. but she did it with poise and professionalism. And she was such a human, and she always cared about me, and she cared about her colleagues, and she cared about the men and women out on the streets. You know, no matter who they were or what their backstory was, she cared about it, and that never left me.
Yeah.
To see that, and then to work with these men and women, you're able to see that. So I think that as a civilian, sharing the civilian hat with Lara over here, expose yourself to it. Get out there. Because you can sit there and write these soliloquies online and do all these things, or write articles or do news stories, and not ever invest the time into really learning how things go.
So I mean, to further that point, Garland Scott works here. You know, I met Garland. When I met Garland, Garland wasn't working for the sheriff's office. Garland was a local pastor off 8th and Liberty, and he had no idea what police were like as people, because the image is very difficult to shake. You know, if that's what you see every day, you tend to think that we're not just regular people. I can't stress that enough. We're just regular people that wear a uniform, we dress the same, we run a paramilitary organization, and we go out and serve the public. And sometimes we end up having to do things that are very difficult to see. But in the day and age in which we live, we're going to show it to them because we said we would. And it's very difficult, but what he found out, and it's trickled down to several people in our community, that this is a bunch of good people that are working here trying very hard to do the right thing. You know, the temptation for me is to stop talking to everybody. Right. That's a temptation, but that's wrong. It's not the right thing to do. The right thing to do is continue to talk to our public, because when I look at some of our news media friends, I've said this and I'll say this again, they are a way for us to talk to the public. Not really that concerned with what they ask me, what they say, or even what they think. I'm more concerned with what the public thinks. So I'm going to keep sharing information, which is why we're doing all this, because we want people to know how open, how honest, and how hardworking we are as an agency.
Yeah. And like dovetailing on that and what you were saying earlier, Vic, I mean, I think maybe in no other area that I can think of does the public have more opinions on without education than the criminal justice system. So, and I'm not saying that to be critical. It's more an observation. So,
sure.
You know, you're right. Please, like, if you have opinions on this process, come do ride-alongs with different officers. Get the perspective. It's free. There's no other. If you want to see why investigations take so long to make an arrest and then come to a conclusion, come to court. They're open.
Yeah.
There's, you know, anyone can come and sit in. And I think you'll understand why, you know, the wheels of justice grind slow, why investigations take so long and are so painstaking. And I think, and, you know, I am obviously biased because I've operated in this space, I think that whether or not you'll come out, I mean, certainly the criminal justice system is always subject to improvement. I agree with that. But I think you will see that the men and women who dedicate their lives to public service in this space do it as a lifestyle.
Right.
I mean, they're not getting rich, and they carry these cases with them forever. And I know the sheriff, the undersheriff, and I feel that way, that there are cases that live with us forever,
sure.
No matter what the outcome was.
Yeah.
And
I've already been in those situations
sure,
too.
just by, you know, exposure.
Yeah.
So, you know, it is an open space.
Right.
Come, join,
Right.
see what it is.
And that's what we're doing. I mean, with this thing right here, we're going long here.
Yeah, that's fine.
It doesn't matter necessarily if 5 people watch it or 500,000
Absolutely.
people or 5 million people watch it, because we are putting it out there. We are opening it up, and we are trying to take you inside the operations here so you understand it, so there's not this shroud of secrecy.
Correct.
And I just feel incredible to be a small piece of being able to communicate with the citizens in our community. So I do want to wrap up, because we have an information sharing meeting where we go over all the crime details, all the statistics, all the trends, so that all the different detectives and patrol officers are able to know what's going on. But we did mention a few things. Some ongoing investigations.
Yep.
We got to cover it.
Yep.
We got to circle back to it. You brought up McNeil. That's the traffic stop from February 19th. I'll ask you about that, and then I'll ask you about a few more before we wrap up. So where does it stand, and what's the latest on the investigation?
So I think it's clear now he's not going to be charged criminally.
Right.
There's an administrative,
Officer Bowers.
Officer
He's not
Bowers,
gonna
that's
be
correct.
charged criminally. The
That's
officer
correct.
involved.
Now we're waiting for the administrative process to finish it, the internal affairs investigation to see if there's a violation of policy. I don't get involved in those investigations. I don't go tell them what to do. I don't tell them to find him innocent. I don't tell them to find him that he violated policy. It's a clean investigation where I'm not involved. When it's done, it comes up to the undersheriff. Undersheriff comes to me, we talk it out, and then we see if there's a violation, we determine his discipline. If there's not a violation, we're going to tell the public about it.
So that's still going on. The officer in question is still on desk duty, does not have police powers.
Yeah, so let me say this. It's 180 days. They have 180 days after the criminal investigation is over and they receive that case. They have 180 days to finish that investigative process. There's interviews, there's a lot of things that take place. I'm not rushing them because accuracy is more important than speed.
Absolutely. Another big thing, and I can bring this to everybody, is the jail investigation with Charles Faggart.
Yep.
The death of an inmate in the jail, that has been a very, very sensitive topic and some thorough investigations. Where do we stand on this case?
So that case, we can't go into great detail, again, because it is under investigation, but let me explain the process of how it works. When that came to our attention, the sheriff immediately decided to put it out for the public to know that there was an incident that happened in the jail, and we are conducting a criminal investigation, and that's what we started with, was a criminal investigation. So we gathered all of the facts. Our integrity unit did tons of interviews, gathered video from inside that jail. Once our investigation was over, we then take all of that and we give that to the state attorney's office. The state attorney's office then starts looking at all that evidence to decide if there was criminal wrongdoing in that case. We have our opinion. We give that to the state, but they decide if there's criminal wrongdoing on their own. Another facet of that investigation is because there was a death involved, is the medical examiner, right? So that body becomes evidence. That body goes to the medical examiner's office, who, again, has nothing to do with JSO.
They're completely separate.
Separate entity. It's a state agency. It's not a JSO agency. They do the autopsy. They determine what caused the death, and then they give that to the state attorney's also. So the state attorney's office still has it. I know they are still working through it. They have not made their final decision yet. And at this point, the sheriff's office stands by and waits. Now, every officer that was involved in that incident they're on the administrative side, right? So none of them have contact with inmates at this point because this was all inside the jail. They're all doing other duties where they don't have contact.
Right.
And Vic, I just want to sort of jump in and throw in this. Obviously I have not been in communication directly with the state attorney's office about, where they are in their decision-making on the Faggart investigation. But I have handled a lot of death investigations as a prosecutor. And I can tell you that, in a lot of ways, this timetable is not inconsistent with the decision-making process. Like I said, Ms. Nelson and her prosecutors, they are thorough, they're analytical, they are trying to make sure that when they file charges, they have proof beyond a reasonable doubt and a reasonable probability of conviction. So I am sure.
Or if they don't charge.
If there are no charges.
Right.
Also.
So, but they're running down every single lead. And if, I can tell you in my experience, if, the decision is made not to file charges, that's not because, they've been flippant or lackadaisical in their investigation. They've turned off every stone and they looked into it.
Yeah.
So
let me add, I know my boss very well. The sheriff does not like to sit on things.
no.
Whether it's good, bad, or ugly.
He moves fast.
He moves
wa-
fast.
He wants to get it out there. So we're not just sitting by idly waiting on Ms. Nelson and her agency to give us the results. I'm in constant contact with the state attorney's office. I'm not asking what they're doing. I'm just asking, are we close? Is there a timeline? And it's not ready yet, but I think they are getting closer.
Yeah, and we understand that the public wants answers, and once there is some sort of conclusion here,
Yeah.
whatever that conclusion may be, we will put it out there.
Yeah,
And
of
we
course.
will be open and transparent and let people know whatever the findings are.
Let me tell you why it's easy for me to talk to the public, because we tell the truth. So it's not hard for me to go out in front of the public and tell them that there was an incident inside the jail that we self-reported to the public, that there was an incident inside the jail that we were looking into, right? That wasn't difficult. It's not difficult to talk about the McNeil case. It's not difficult to talk about any case, because we're telling the truth. Everything that we say is verifiable, right, and will be verifiable when it's all said and done. The biggest thing for me is there's a process that has to play itself out, and we just have to be patient. Just because you're being patient doesn't mean that it's going away, because it's not. It's never going to go away. We're not going to be finished with it until we have a disposition, it's complete, and we are, a decision has been made which way we're going to go in that case. It can go either way. I don't know where it's going to go. It could be they're completely innocent. It could be they're guilty of something. But here's what I'm saying. Here's what I'll say. We probably would have had a lot more information if they were wearing body cams. And the reason why I went in this direction is because we couldn't see, right? That's as far as I'm going to go as far as that's concerned. We couldn't see, and that drove us to just to make sure, right? We want to make sure that nothing went on that shouldn't have gone on. So we're waiting for that process to be completed, and it's very difficult for me to wait. I'm not a waiter.
He's not.
True story.
But it is what it is.
All right. So this has been a great conversation, way longer than I thought. But who would have thought that all of us here could go into all of these details? I might have to save some of these questions for next time as well, because there will be a next time. Is there anything else that you want to share with the public? This is going to be a new way for us to continue to communicate, in addition to our website, in addition to social media and talking through our news partners and community events. Is there anything else that you want to get out there to the public?
No, but we're always going to be open and honest. Yeah. We're always going to be public. Me and the sheriff, we always say this. We're humans, right? Sometimes we like, good grief, but we always say the truth is always going to win out, and we're always going to tell the truth.
All right.
Always going to tell the truth.
All right. So Sheriff T.K. Waters, Chief Public Affairs Officer Lara Matina, Under Sheriff Sean Coursey, thank you for being voluntold for this.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you
It
for
was
being voluntold for this opportunity.
It is
Absolutely.
fun.
Thank
I
you,
got
Nick.
just a thumbs up in the text message. Hey, by the way, just make sure that you're in on this. But this is a great opportunity. If you have any suggestions, if you have anything that you want to ask us, please reach out to us. We are an open sheriff's office, and we are always improving to try to get better at not only communicating with you, but most importantly, listening to you. So subscribe to all of our social media channels, and we will catch you with the next update.
Also, remember to sign up for those ride-alongs. It's very difficult for people to want to do that, but sign up for those ride-alongs. There's nothing more transparent than getting into a police car with a police officer and ride with them every hour of their workday.
Great.